They never thought I would achieve anything great. In my family's eyes, I was just Julien, the unremarkable son, living off the Moreau name, sitting quietly at the dinner table, invisible amidst the glory of my father and sister. But that night, in the magnificent hall of Le Bristol, when I stepped onto the stage and announced my name, not Julien Moreau, but Alistair Vance, their whole world collapsed. I had hidden my identity for 3 years, and now it was time for them to face the truth. The son they despised was the very one holding the fate of the entire family in his hands. The air in the grand dining room of the Moreau residence, nestled deep within the opulent embrace of Paris's 16th arrondissement, always felt thickest during these family dinners. Tonight, it was practically suffocating, heavy with the scent of expensive perfume, beeswax candles, and the unspoken weight of expectation. I, Julien Moreau, occupied my usual seat, present, yet peripheral, a ghost at my own family's feast. Across the polished mahogany table, shimmering under the light of a crystal chandelier that dripped diamonds of light, sat my father, Henry Moreau, patriarch, CEO of Moreau Fils Technologies, a man carved from tradition and an almost suffocating sense of legacy. Beside him, my mother, Sylvie, radiated a practiced elegance, her attention flitting between her husband and her daughter, ensuring the tableau of familial perfection remained undisturbed. And then there was Elodie, my elder sister. Tonight, she was the sun around which the Moreau universe revolved. Her smile was bright, perhaps a shade too triumphant, as father lauded her latest achievement. Isabelle, father began, his voice resonant with pride, his gaze fixed firmly on her. Your handling of the preliminary negotiations with Brouwer Ag has been exemplary. Truly, 6 billion euros. This merger will solidify the Moreau name for generations. He raised his glass, the deep red wine catching the light. To Elodie and to the future of Moreau Fils. To Elodie, mother echoed, her smile mirroring father's approval. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting second, a glance devoid of malice, but utterly empty of recognition, as if looking through me to the ornate wallpaper beyond. I raised my glass mechanically, the crystal cool against my fingertips. The clinking sound seemed distant, muted. It wasn't jealousy that gnawed at me, not exactly. It was something colder, deeper, the familiar ache of invisibility, honed over 30 years. Elodie beamed, accepting the praise as her birthright. Thank you, father, mother. It wasn't easy. Brouwer Ag drives a hard bargain, but I believe this partnership aligns perfectly with our long-term strategic vision. Her eyes flickered towards me, a subtle tightening round her mouth, a silent dismissal. See, this is how real business is done, little brother. My mind drifted, inevitably, back through the years. Back to the countless times my own strategic visions had been swatted away like bothersome flies. I remember presenting my detailed analysis on the escalating threats in cybersecurity, proposing a significant investment in AI-driven predictive analytics for Moreau Fils financial sector clients. I was barely 25, fresh out of École Polytechnique, brimming with ideas that felt urgent, vital. Father had listened with that impenetrable patience of his, fingers steepled. Julien, he'd said, his tone gentle but final, these are interesting concepts, but theoretical. Moreau Fils deals in tangible assets, established relationships. Cybersecurity is a cost center, not a growth engine. And AI, that's for Silicon Valley dreamers. Focus on something more grounded. Perhaps assist Elodie with client relations, the board members, father's contemporaries, men whose understanding of technology seemed frozen sometime round the turn of the millennium, had nodded in solemn agreement. Elodie, already VP of Operations then, seeking to consolidate her position as heir apparent, had sealed my fate. Honestly, father, she chimed in, a condescending lightness in her voice. Julien's ideas are rather fanciful. We need practical solutions, not science fiction. She'd even used the term whimsical and realistic in a later hallway conversation I wasn't meant to overhear. That dismissal, the casual way my passion and foresight were belittled, not just by my father, but by the sister I had once, long ago, shared childhood secrets with. That was the catalyst. It wasn't just rejection. It felt like an erasure. They didn't just disagree with my ideas. They invalidated my entire perspective, my very intelligence. I wasn't just the spare son. I was the flawed one, the dreamer unfit for the pragmatic world of Moreau and Fils. The pain of that, the quiet humiliation, didn't immediately turn to anger. It smoldered, a low, persistent heat deep within me. I realized then that their world, bound by tradition and terrified of disruption, would never have space for me. If I wanted to prove my worth, if I wanted to show them the future they were too blind or too proud to see, I couldn't do it from within their gilded cage. I had to leave, not in defeat, but with purpose. I would build my own world, my own legacy, brick by digital brick, in the shadows they so readily consign me to. And one day, I would force them to see. So, I left Moreau and Fils, citing vague desires to find my own path. They expressed mild disappointment, quickly masked by relief. The problem child was removing himself from the equation. Father gave me a modest allowance, enough to keep up appearances, but not enough to pose any real threat, and effectively washed his hands of my professional future. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of living a life so compartmentalized it sometimes felt like inhabiting different universes simultaneously. To my family, I was still Julien Moreau, the somewhat aimless youngest son, tinkering with projects in London, occasionally surfacing for these mandatory family rituals. But across the channel, and strategically headquartered in the discreet financial hub of Zurich, I was Alistair Vance, the enigmatic, rarely seen CEO of Nexus Dynamics, a company I built from the ground up with my own savings, relentless work, and a small circle of trusted, brilliant minds who knew me only as Vance. Nexus Dynamics specialized in precisely the areas Moreau and Fils had dismissed: cutting-edge cybersecurity, big data analytics, predictive AI modeling. We operated at the forefront of technological defense and intelligence, serving clients who understood the real value and the real threats of the digital age. While Moreau and Fils, with its legacy name and established but increasingly dated infrastructure, was valued generously at perhaps €4 billion on a good day, Nexus Dynamics, operating in stealth, had quietly achieved a valuation north of €12 billion. The irony was a constant, bitter companion. My days were a whirlwind of encrypted communications, high-stakes strategy meetings conducted via secure video links from my minimalist London apartment or the sleek Zurich office, and the constant pressure of maintaining the impenetrable wall between Julien Moreau and Alistair Vance. The loneliness was profound. Every milestone Nexus Dynamics achieved, landing a major government contract, thwarting a sophisticated cyber attack on a global bank, developing a breakthrough analytical algorithm, brought a surge of fierce, sullen pride. But it was a pride I couldn't share. There was no one to celebrate with, no family to acknowledge the validation I so desperately craved, yet simultaneously scorned. The contrast was jarring. The dynamic, hyper-modern energy of Nexus Dynamics' glass walls, open plan offices, though I rarely visited physically, preferring remote command. Brilliant young minds collaborating across continents felt worlds away from the heavy, whip-and-nailed formality and stifling hierarchy of Moreau and Fils. Sometimes the two worlds would collide jarringly. I'd be deep in a complex negotiation with a potential Nexus client, discussing multi-million-euro cybersecurity architecture, when my phone would buzz with a call from Mother. Her voice, laced with that faint, polite condescension, would inquire if I was keeping busy and gently remind me of an upcoming family obligation. To try to make an effort, Julien, it means so much to your father, and wear a proper suit this time, dear. Hanging up, I'd have to take a deep breath, recalibrating from Alistair Vance, decisive leader of a tech powerhouse, back to Julien Moreau. The perpetual disappointment, the risk of a slip-up, a stray comment, a recognized mannerism, was a constant, low-level hum beneath the surface of my life. Tonight, listening to the celebratory toasts for Lodi and the Brauer AG deal, the hum intensified. Brauer AG, a solid, old-world German engineering firm, on paper, It looked like a sound conservative move for Moreau and Fils bolstering their industrial tech portfolio. But something felt off. My instincts, honed by years of analyzing corporate structures and digital footprints at Nexus, prickled. Father continued, oblivious. This merger secures our flank, expands our market share in Germany, and brings their renowned engineering expertise into the fold. It's a legacy move, Isabel. Your grandfather would be proud. Elodie preened. Their reputation is impeccable, father. Their financials are solid. The due diligence checked out perfectly. Did it? I thought, swilling the wine in my glass, the deep red suddenly looking like blood. Did your antiquated due diligence, run by father's loyal but technologically naive team, really dig deep enough? The urge to speak, to warn them, rose in my throat, bitter and familiar, but I swallowed it down. I remembered the sting of past dismissals. They wouldn't listen. They would see it as sour grapes, as the failed son trying to undermine his successful sister. No, let them proceed. Let them walk towards the precipice they couldn't see. The low, smoldering fire with the knee flickered, growing slightly brighter. Perhaps the time for waiting in the shadows was nearing its end. The stage was being set, not by me, but by their own complacent pride. And soon, the curtain would rise. The call came 3 days after that suffocating family dinner. It wasn't from my family, but from Dr. Lena Petrova, my chief technology officer at Nexus Dynamics, patched through on our most secure channel from the Zurich Nerve Center. Lena, a formidable intellect with eyes that missed nothing, knew me only as Alistair Vance, a demanding but fair employer who valued results above all else. Mr. Vance, her voice was calm, precise, as always, but carried an undercurrent of urgency. We've completed the deep dive analysis on Brower Ag you requested after noticing their names surface in M&A chatter. I leaned back in my chair in the London apartment that served as my command post. The city lights painting patterns on the minimalist walls. And it's not pretty, she stated flatly. Superficially, they look stable. Legacy name, decent revenue streams. But dig deeper. It's a house of cards, Mr. Vance. A very carefully constructed one. My pulse quick and slightly. Explain. Significant undisclosed debt. Lena began, rattling off figures that made my eyes narrow. Leverage to the hilt, hidden through complex off-balance sheet entities. Furthermore, their operational technology security is archaic. We're talking critical infrastructure vulnerabilities that a moderately skilled hacker could penetrate with ease. They've clearly been cutting costs aggressively in essential areas, likely to inflate short-term profit margins and make themselves attractive for acquisition. She continued, detailing outdated software and patched systems, and evidence of at least two recent, minor security breaches that seem to have been quietly contained and covered up. Whoever is doing due diligence on them is either incompetent or looking only at the surface financials provided by Brower's management. The underlying structure is rotten. Acquiring them in their current state wouldn't just be buying debt. It would be inheriting a ticking time bomb of potential system failures, data breaches, and regulatory nightmares. A cold, sharp clarity settled over me. This was it. This was the impeccable partner Elodie was so proud of bringing to the table, the cornerstone of father's legacy move. They hadn't seen it. Of course, they hadn't. Moreau and Phil's due diligence team, steeped in traditional financial analysis, likely wouldn't even know what questions to ask regarding deep cybersecurity vulnerabilities or sophisticated financial obfuscation. They would have accepted Brower Ag's polished presentations and audited but cleverly misleading financial statements at face value. A wave of complex emotions washed over me. There was a grim satisfaction, a chilling affirmation of my long-ignored warnings about technological complacency. I told you so, a voice whispered in my mind, sharp and vindictive. But beneath it, unexpectedly, was a flicker of something else. A pang of concern, not for father or Elodie, perhaps, but for the Moreau name itself, for the hundreds of employees at Moreau and Fils whose livelihoods depended on the company's stability. This deal wouldn't just embarrass my family, it could cripple the company, potentially leading to its collapse. I stood up, walking towards the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing out at the sprawling, indifferent city below. Should I warn them, pick up the phone, call father, lay out Lena's findings? The image of his dismissive expression, Elodie's condescending smile, flashed before my eyes. They wouldn't believe me. They would accuse me of fabricating intelligence, of trying to sabotage Elodie's triumph out of spite. My warning would be interpreted as weakness, as desperation. It would change nothing, except perhaps to expose my own unconventional sources of information, raising questions I couldn't answer. No, they had made their bed of arrogance and willful blindness. They needed to lie in it. Only a shock, a brutal confrontation with reality, would ever penetrate their fortress of self-assurance. My decision solidified, cold and hard. I wouldn't warn them. I would let them proceed, walking confidently towards the trap they had failed to see. But I wouldn't just let them fall into it. An idea began to form, audacious and precise. If Brouwer Ag was a house of cards, vulnerable and desperate beneath its facade, then perhaps it was ripe for a different kind of acquisition. A swift, decisive strike. Lena, I said, turning back from the window, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. Thank you for the analysis. It confirms my suspicions. I paused, letting the weight of my next words settle. Prepare Nexus Dynamics M&A division. I want us to initiate a hostile takeover bid for Brouwer Ag. Immediately, there was a fractional pause on the line. Lena was inflappable. But this was unexpected. A hostile takeover, Mr. Vance, Brouwer Ag, given their condition. Precisely because of their condition. Lena, I interrupted, the persona of Alistair Vance taking full control. They are vulnerable. They're major shareholders. Once they understand the true depth of the financial and security risks we've uncovered, we'll be eager to offload their stakes before the house collapses. We move quickly, quietly, through the Frankfurt and London exchanges, offer a slight premium over the current depressed trading price, but significantly less than the reported Moreau and Fils merger value, emphasize Nexus Dynamics' expertise in turning around technologically compromised assets. This needs to be executed with surgical precision and absolute secrecy. No leaks, no hints, especially not towards Paris. Understood, Mr. Vance, Lena replied, the professional clicking back into place. We have the capital reserves. I'll mobilize the team. Target completion. I glanced at the calendar. The Moreau and Fils Brouwer Ag signing ceremony was scheduled in just over a week. A grand affair plan at Le Bristol Hotel in Paris. The objective is to secure controlling interest in Brouwer Ag no later than 24 hours before the scheduled signing ceremony in Paris. Can it be done? It will be tight, sir. Very tight. But yes, Nexus Dynamics can achieve this. Good, I said, a cold determination settling within me. Proceed, Lena. Keep me updated on progress, Arlie. Maintain absolute radio silence otherwise. I ended the call, the silence in the apartment suddenly feeling immense. The game had changed. This was no longer about passively watching my family stumble. This was about actively taking control, about rewriting the narrative on my own terms. It was a move driven by a complex cocktail of motives. The desire to protect the Moreau name in my own way, by preventing a catastrophic merger. The cold satisfaction of proving my father and sister catastrophically wrong. And the raw, undeniable ambition of Alistair Vance seizing a strategic opportunity. The next week was a blur of tense activity, conducted entirely from my London base, while outwardly maintaining the facade of Julie and Moreau fielding brief, disinterested calls from mother about my travel plans for the celebration, exchanging polite but empty emails with Elodie inwardly. I was Alistair Vance, orchestrating a multi-billion-euro corporate raid. Days were filled with encrypted calls to Lena and the M&A team, analyzing shareholder positions, approving offer strategies, monitoring market reactions in Frankfurt. Nights were sleepless, fueled by caffeine and adrenaline, tracking the silent accumulation of Brouwer Ag shares through Nexus Dynamics holding companies. Every percentage point gained felt like a small victory, tightening the invisible net. The stress was immense, maintaining the calm, slightly detached persona of Julien while managing the high-stakes, high-pressure reality of the takeover required a level of mental compartmentalization that left me feeling frayed, stretched thin between two identities. There were moments I felt like an imposter in both lives. On the eve of the signing ceremony, Lena's final confirmation came through. Mr. Vance, it's done. Nexus Dynamics now holds 58% of Brower AG's voting shares. Control is secured. The transfer is being finalized as we speak. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it left me lightheaded, followed immediately by a surge of something else, anticipation. The quiet accumulation was over. The silent strike had hit its mark. Tomorrow, in the heart of Paris, under the glittering chandeliers of La Bristol, the illusion would shatter. Tomorrow, Alistair Vance would step out of the shadows, and the Moreau family would finally see the sun they had so profoundly underestimated. The curtain was about to rise on the final act. The ballroom at La Bristol shimmered with an almost blinding luminescence. Crystal chandeliers cast intricate patterns across the high, ornate ceiling, reflecting in the polished parquet floor and the clinking champagne glasses held by Paris's elite. Journalists jostled politely for position, cameras ready, business leaders, politicians, and society figures mingled, their conversations a low, expectant hum beneath the strains of a string quartet. It was the epitome of Parisian high society and corporate power, a stage perfectly set for the Moreau family's moment of triumph. From my position near the beck, partially obscured by a marble pillar, I watched them. Father, Henry Moreau, stood tall, radiating patriarchal confidence, shaking hands, accepting congratulations with practiced noblesse oblige. Mother, Sylvie, was a vision in haute couture, her smile perfectly calibrated for the cameras, her eyes scanning the room, assessing social standings. And Elodie was incandescent, bathed in the glow of her success. She moved through the crowd with effortless grace, the conquering heroine, the future of Moreau and Fils embodied. The reported €6 billion merger with Brower AG was the talk of the room. A bold move, a strategic masterstroke, a consolidation of legacy and future. The irony was thick enough to taste. I felt strangely calm, an island of stillness in the swirling currents of anticipation. The frantic energy of the past week had coalesced into a sharp, focused clarity. My suit was impeccable, tailored, projecting an understated confidence that was pure Alistair Vance, yet worn by Julien Moreau. The duality felt less like a strain now, more like a weapon honed and ready. A hush fell over the room as Father and Elodie ascended the small, elegantly decorated stage at the front, flanked by the French and German flags and the Moreau and Fils banner. Herr Schmidt, the CEO of Brower AG, a man blissfully unaware that his company was no longer his to sell, stood beside them, looking appropriately solemn and important. Father stepped up to the podium, beaming. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, friends, today marks a momentous occasion in the history of Moreau and Fils Technologies. His voice, amplified by the speakers, filled the room. He spoke of heritage, of enduring values, of the foresight needed to navigate the modern world. He lavished praise on Elodie, the driving force behind this visionary partnership, who inclined her head modestly, though her eyes sparkled with unconcealed pride. Elodie then took the podium, her voice clear and confident. She spoke of synergy, of shared values, of the bright future forged by the union of French innovation and German engineering excellence. This merger with Brower AG, she declared, is not just a transaction, it is a transformation. It positions Moreau and Fils at the vanguard of European industry for decades to come. Applause rippled through the ballroom. The signing table awaited, pens laid out on polished wood. Herr Schmidt looked ready. Father and Elodie exchanged a look of mutual triumph. This was their moment, and it was my cue. Taking a steadying breath, I stepped out from behind the pillar and began walking towards the stage. Not hurriedly, but with deliberate, measured steps. Heads turned, a murmur rippled through the crowd. People recognized me. Julien Moreau, the other sibling, the one who never quite fit. I saw Father's eyes find me first. Surprise flicker across his face, quickly followed by a frown of distinct annoyance. What is Julien doing? This is highly inappropriate. Mother's perfectly composed expression tightened, a silent signal of disapproval. Elodie's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, her eyes narrowing. What stunt is he trying to pull now? Ignoring the stares and whispers, I reached the steps leading to the stage and ascended them smoothly. The security guards hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Father took a step forward, about to speak, likely to quietly, but firmly tell me to leave. I reached the podium just as Elodie was stepping back, a look of confused irritation on her face. I didn't address my family. Instead, I turned to face the audience, the microphone, the expectant silence. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm, amplified, cutting through the residual applause. "If I might have a moment." A collective intake of breath seemed to sweep the room. All eyes were on me. I could feel the weight of their confusion, their curiosity. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Father's face darkening with anger, Elodie's clenching her fists almost imperceptibly at her sides. "For those of you who know me," I continued, my gaze sweeping across the sea of faces, "you know me as Julien Moreau." I paused, letting the name hang in the air. Then, I shifted my stance slightly, my voice taking on a new edge of authority, the authority of Alistair Vance. "However, today, I stand before you in a different capacity. I am Alistair Vance, CEO of Nexus Dynamics." Silence, utter, stunned silence. Then, a wave of confused murmurs erupted. Vance, Nexus Dynamics, the cybersecurity powerhouse. What was Julien Moreau talking about? The journalists scrambled, cameras flashing, sensing a major story breaking. I saw the exact moment the name registered with my father and sister. Father's face went slack with disbelief, his complexion paling rapidly. Elodie stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, comprehension dawning in her eyes like a slow-motion horror film. Alistair Vance, the elusive tech billionaire? Julien, impossible. Mother looked utterly bewildered, clutching Father's arm. Ignoring their shock, I pressed on, my tone remaining coolly professional. Nexus Dynamics, headquartered in London and Zurich, I stated clearly, is a global leader in cybersecurity, data analytics, and AI-driven intelligence, with a current market valuation exceeding 12 billion euros. Gasps rippled through the audience. 12 billion? The figure dwarfed the Brouwer Ag deal, dwarfed Moreau and Fils itself. The name Nexus Dynamics was known, whispered about in tech and finance circles as a rapidly ascending, somewhat mysterious giant. But its connection to the overlooked Mersun, inconceivable. And as of 18 o'clock Central European time last night, I continued, letting each word land with precision. Nexus Dynamics completed the acquisition of a controlling stake 58% in Brouwer Ag. The impact was immediate, visceral, a collective gasp, louder this time. Herr Schmidt, the Brouwer CEO, looked as if he'd been physically struck, stumbling back a step, his face a mask of confusion and dawning panic. Therefore, I stated, looking directly at Father and Elodie now, holding their stunned, horrified gazes, the merger signing scheduled for today between Moreau and Fils Technologies and Brouwer Ag cannot proceed. Brouwer Ag is no longer an independent entity available for merger. Chaos threatened to break out. Voices rose. Reporters surged forward. Father looked utterly frozen, speechless, his face ashen. Elodie's shock morphed into a blaze of fury, humiliation burning in her eyes. She looked like she wanted to physically attack me. Furthermore, I raised my voice slightly, regaining control of the room. Our immediate and intensive due diligence, conducted over the past week by Nexus Dynamics technical teams, has confirmed what Moreau and Phil's own assessment tragically missed. I gestured towards a discreetly positioned screen at the side of the stage, which flickered to life, displaying stark data visualizations, complex debt structures, security vulnerability reports, redacted evidence of data breaches. Brouwer Ag, I announced, my voice echoing in the suddenly silent ballroom, is burdened by significant undisclosed liabilities. Its operational technology is dangerously outdated and riddled with critical security flaws. Far from being the stable partner Moreau and Fils believed it was acquiring, Brouwer Ag was, and is, on the verge of financial and operational collapse. This merger would not have been a transformation. It would have been an act of corporate suicide for Moreau and Fils. The evidence on the screen was damning, irrefutable. The cold, hard data laid bare the truth that Moreau and Phil's hubris and outdated methods had blinded them to. The room was thick with tension, the air crackling with the sheer drama of the revelation. The Moreau family's moment of triumph had imploded into a public spectacle of catastrophic failure and breathtaking humiliation. I let the silence hang for a moment, allowing the full weight of the situation to sink in. Then, I stepped away from the Alistair Vance persona, letting the raw emotion, the years of accumulated hurt and dismissal, surface not as anger, but as a quiet, profound sadness mixed with steely resolve. I looked directly at my father, then my sister. "I tried to warn you," I said, my voice lower now, imbued with personal history. "Years ago, I presented the case for modernizing Moreau and Fils, for investing in the very cybersecurity and analytical capabilities that would have easily uncovered Brouwer Ag's true state. I spoke of the evolving threats, the need for a new approach. My gaze held alities. My concerns were dismissed. My ideas were called fanciful. I was told to focus on more grounded things, to leave the real business to others." I paused, letting the memory hang between us. I left Moreau and Phil's not because I gave up, but because I realized I had to build elsewhere what I was not allowed to build here. Nexus dynamics is the result. My gaze returned to my father, whose face was now a mask of incomprehensible emotion, shock, betrayal, perhaps even a dawning, horrifying respect. "This action today," I said, gesturing towards the now cancelled signing table, "might seem ruthless, but in truth, by stopping this disastrous merger, Nexus Dynamics, I have just saved Moreau and Fils from almost certain bankruptcy." Another shockwave went through the remaining Moreaus. Bankruptcy, saved by Julien. The concepts were irreconcilable with their entire worldview. "But make no mistake," I added, the steel returning to my voice. "This near disaster has exposed the deep-seated weaknesses within Moreau and Fils. Its technology is lagging. Its processes are outdated. Its leadership has demonstrated a critical lack of foresight. In the current market, after this public failure, the company is incredibly vulnerable." I let that stark assessment hang in the air. Then, I delivered the final, devastating blow, an offer wrapped in the guise of salvation, yet tasting undeniably of vengeance. "Therefore," I announced, my voice ringing with the authority of both Julien Moreau and Alistair Vance, "Nexus Dynamics is prepared to make an offer. We will acquire Moreau and Phil's technologies. We will integrate its salvageable assets, restructure its operations, and invest the necessary capital to bring it into the 21st century. We will do this primarily to salvage what remains of the Moreau name and prevent its complete collapse." I paused. "Our offer price will be nominal, symbolic, enough to settle immediate debts and ensure a dignified exit for current leadership, but reflecting the reality of the situation." It was the ultimate reversal. The rejected son, the dreamer, now held the fate of the entire family legacy in his hands, offering to buy the company that had scorned him, not as an equal, but as a rescuer dictating terms from a position of unassailable strength. It was checkmate. Father swayed slightly, looking oddly broken. Elodie's face was contorted with a mixture of impotent rage and utter despair. Mother finally seemed to grasp the magnitude of the catastrophe, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. The room remained silent, stunned by the audacity, the sheer, cold brilliance of the maneuver. The cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing the raw, unscripted downfall of a dynasty and the astonishing rise of its forgotten son. There was nowhere for them to go, no alternative. Rejecting my offer meant certain ruin and even greater public humiliation. Accepting it meant surrendering everything: the company, the legacy, the pride, to the very person they had spent years looking down upon. With trembling hands, guided almost mechanically by a lawyer who seemed to appear out of nowhere, likely dispatched by Nexus, Father eventually moved towards a hastily prepared preliminary agreement laid out on a side table. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. The scratching of his pen signing away control of the company his grandfather had founded, the company he had dedicated his life to, the company he had intended to pass to Elodie, was the only sound in the vast, silent ballroom. Elodie watched, her expression hollow, her eyes empty pools reflecting the wreckage of her ambitions. The bright future she had spoken of just minutes before had vanished, replaced by a bitter, inescapable present dictated by the brother she had so carelessly underestimated. The gilded cage had shattered, and the unseen spark had finally, irrevocably, become a consuming fire. 1 year later, the view from the CEO's office, my office, in the newly renovated Moreau building on Boulevard Haussmann, offered a panorama of Parisian rooftops under crisp autumn sky. The heavy, dark wood panels Father had favored were gone, replaced by sleek glass walls and minimalist design. The air hummed not with stifling tradition, but with the quiet energy of innovation. The company itself bore a new name, steadily reflecting the change. Nexus Moreau Paris. It was a nod to the past, yes, but firmly anchored in the future I was building. The integration had been challenging but swift. Moreau and Fils Technologies, salvaged from the brink, was undergoing a radical transformation under the Nexus Dynamics umbrella. We'd injected massive capital, overhauled the archaic IT infrastructure, implemented cutting-edge cybersecurity protocols, the kind I'd once pleaded for, and retrained or replaced personnel where necessary. The focus shifted from servicing legacy clients with outdated solutions to pioneering AI-driven analytics and bespoke security architecture for a global clientele. Nexus Moreau Paris wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, rapidly regaining market share and respect, this time built on genuine technological prowess, not just a fading family name. As for me, Julien Moreau, the lines had blurred. The alias, Alistair Vance, was retired, no longer necessary. I was simply Julien Moreau, CEO of Nexus Dynamics, and its significant Parisian subsidiary. The tech world, initially stunned by the dramatic revelation at Le Bristol, now regarded me with a mixture of awe and respect. The dreamer was now a recognized visionary, a decisive leader who had orchestrated one of the most audacious corporate plays in recent memory. I ran both entities with a different philosophy, encouraging open debate, valuing dissenting opinions, fostering talent regardless of background or connection, actively seeking out the fanciful ideas that could become the next breakthrough. I was determined to build the kind of environment I had been denied. The reversal of fortune for my family was stark and quietly observed by the Parisian elite who had witnessed their public downfall. Father had accepted forced retirement. He lived quietly, rarely venturing out, the vibrant patriarch replaced by a subdued, elderly man grappling with the ruins of his legacy. We barely spoke. There was too much water, too much wreckage, under that particular bridge. Our rare encounters were strained, polite formalities devoid of warmth or true connection. Mother, stripped of the social standing that had defined her existence, struggled to adapt. Her days were no longer filled with prestigious charity committees and society events. She maintained appearances, but the effortless elegance was replaced by a brittle fragility. Her calls to me were infrequent, usually centered around practical matters, tinged with a hesitant, almost fearful respect that felt more alienating than the old condescension. Elodie's fate was perhaps the most poignant illustration of the shift. After the initial fury and humiliation faded, she was left adrift. Her ambition, once her defining trait, seemed extinguished. I had, perhaps controversially, offered her a mid-level management position within Nexus Moreau Paris, not out of pity, but as a pragmatic assessment of her operational skills. Stripped of the nepotistic advantages she had previously enjoyed, she accepted, humbled, seeing her navigate the corridors of the company she once expected to inherit. Now just another employee reporting through several layers of management to the brother she dismissed, was a daily reminder of the revolution that had occurred. There was no malice in our interactions, just a vast, unbridgeable distance created by years of disparity. In the final, decisive shift in power. She did her job competently, quietly, the fire in her eyes replaced by a weary resignation. Sometimes, usually late in the evening, sitting in this office that was once my father's seat of power, I'd look out at the city lights and reflect on the whirlwind of the past few years. The satisfaction of the reveal at Le Bristol, the moment of absolute vindication, had been potent, undeniable. There was a primal gratification in proving them wrong and turning the tables so completely. Vengeance, I discovered, could indeed be sweet, but its taste was fleeting, leaving a complex, slightly bitter aftertaste. The real, enduring satisfaction came not from the act of tearing down, but from the process of building up, transforming Moreau and Fils from a decaying relic into Nexus Moreau Paris, fostering a culture of innovation and respect, creating tangible value through technology that felt substantive, meaningful. It was a different kind of legacy, one defined not by inherited name or social standing, but by capability, vision, and positive impact. The greatest lesson learned wasn't about the effectiveness of a well-executed strategy or the thrill of victory. It was something simpler, more fundamental. It was about the corrosive effect of dismissal, the power dynamics within families and organizations, and the crucial importance of listening, truly listening to different perspectives, even, perhaps especially, those that challenge the status quo. It was about recognizing that potential can reside in the most unexpected places, often flourishing brightest when nurtured rather than stifled. My family's failure wasn't just a failure of business strategy. It was a failure of human connection, of respect. They hadn't just misjudged the market, they had profoundly misjudged me, and in doing so, they had sealed their own fate long before Brower Ag ever appeared on their radar. The past still lingered, a shadow in the corner of my mind, but it no longer defined me. The bitterness had largely faded, replaced by a sense of purpose. Looking out at the sprawling city, I felt not the isolation of the secret keeper, nor the sharp sting of the disregarded son, but the grounded focus of a leader with a future to build. The ghosts of the Moreau legacy had been confronted, perhaps not entirely exorcised, but certainly put in their place. Now, it was time to focus on the horizon, on the challenges and opportunities ahead, on forging a legacy defined not by retribution, but by creation. The path forward was clear, illuminated not by the chandeliers of past glory, but by the steady, bright light of innovation and earned respect. How do you find today's story? Leave a comment below. If you like this video, please like and share. Especially don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our interesting and exciting stories.